Hey friends, and welcome to the Happy Hour with Jamie Ivey podcast. I'm your host, Jamie, and I'm so glad you're here. Each week on this show, I invite a girlfriend to join me and we chat about the big things in life, the little things in life, and everything in between. Happy 2020, you guys. It's a new decade, and I thought it would be fun to talk to a few friends about what life was like for them 10 years ago. How has their life changed? What did the year 2010 bring them? What has the last decade brought them? And what are they hoping for over the next 10 years? Hello and goodbye to February, my friends. January seemed like it lasted forever. And February, where did it go? It's Valentine's Day, and now we're into March. Well, today's Your Last Decade is with my friend Liz Bohannon. You might remember Liz back in 2016. She was Happy Hour guest number 75. That feels so long ago, and it kind of was. Well, today we chat all about the fashion brand that she created 10 years ago. Well, actually 11 years ago, you're going to hear her talk about it, called Sseko Designs. We talk a lot about this in her episode, but today on the show, we talk a lot about what were some of the challenges the last 10 years have brought. What was that first year after starting a company like? And then what is she looking for in the next 10 years? Some of my favorite things about the show were when Liz talked about what kept her going, when everything seemed to be going wrong, when it didn't make sense, when they weren't getting paid. You're going to love what was her guiding light almost, what kept her in the fight. All right, you guys, here is my conversation with Liz Bohannon. Hey, Liz, welcome to the special edition of the Happy Hour called Your Last Decade. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, this has been such a fun project of ours, by the way, because the feedback I've heard the most is looking back has been so fun for people. And I am someone who likes to look back. I don't like to dwell on the past by any means, but I like to look back and learn and see and progress. And we over here at the Happy Hour, we have to talk to Liz because a lot has happened in the last 10 years of your life.
Yes. And I actually don't look back that much. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity to do this.
Well, good.
And go back through the memory archives. And it's one of my favorite parts of writing a book was it's crazy how once you open up one door that's been shut for a really long time in your memory, how it can kind of trigger other memories. And I don't know, it's fun. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to get to reflect a little bit because I actually don't do enough of that.
No, well, good. Well, and speaking of your book, Beginner's Pluck, which came out October 1st of 2019, congrats.
Thank you. Thanks so much. That was a wild ride. I mean,
you're
the things that I didn't think I would be doing in the last 10 years.
Well, you're 6 months on the other side of it. How do you feel now?
I have never done anything that I'm I am so glad I did that. And the idea, it was just so much though. You know this, it's just it is such a process. And it was such hard work, so much mental, emotional, intellectual labor that goes into it. But I just, every time I see it, I just, kind of catch glimpses of it, whether it's on my bookshelf or at the office. I just feel really proud of it and really thankful for the experience. And I just continue to be blown away. I'm sure you get this, where it's just when people are so generous to reach out and to share their experience and to share how and why it touched them. And it's incredibly rewarding, and I feel really grateful.
Well, you should feel really grateful, and you did such a great job with that work. And so a lot of it is some of the things we're going to talk about today, which is fun and exciting, because you talk a lot about the story of Sseko in your book. And I want you to take everyone that's listening back to 2010. Now, if my memory serves me right, in 2010, you had already traveled to Uganda and began the process of starting Sseko. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay, good.
You're right. You're so good. You're so good. You knew the exact launch date. You knew. Where's my life? I'm very impressed with your chronology.
Do a little bit of research before we get on the phone.
And I'm actually really grateful when you shared the concept with me, and I was like, okay, 10 years back, I was like, well, Sseko's about 10 years old. And then I started doing it, and I was like, no, that puts me about a year in to having traveled to Uganda, having come up with the concept. And I'm actually really grateful to start there because I tell the very beginning story more. And I think that it's easier to glamorize or for there to be some nostalgia about the like very, very early days. And when I came up with the concept, and for those of you who don't know, I bought a one-way plane ticket to Uganda, and I showed up and I met some amazing women, and we started, I made these kind of crappy at the time sandals and made this really epic promise that was like, hey, okay, if you promise to make these sandals for the next 9 months, because there's a 9-month gap between high school and university. And that was the problem that we were trying to solve, is basically this kind of gap for women who come from low income backgrounds, but are really academically gifted, this gap between high school and college, where a lot of them end up moving back home and getting married and not continuing on to university, even though they want to, and even though they're academically more than qualified. So the challenge that we exist to solve is like bridging this gap, right? So that was 11 years ago. But if we go to 10 years ago, I'm like, I've made the promise. I said, listen, promise that you will go to college. And I'm in the midst of then being on the other side of going like, oh crap. Like,
oh my gosh. Okay. So let's go back to 2010, because you set it up so beautifully. And guys, get our book and read it. It's just a fabulous story as well. And you've been on the happy hour before. I did not do my research on that to figure out what guest you were, but it was a long time ago. But
I was on maternity leave with my first son, so I do remember that. So that was over 3.5 years ago.
Crazy. Okay, let's go back to 2010. You have started this new thing. At the time, I want to know, does it feel like it's a hobby, or do you feel like it's going to last a year, or do you think this is the rest of my life?
Somewhere in between there.
Okay.
So at this point in 2010, we had just sold enough sandals, probably by the end of 2009, we had sold enough sandals that we were able to send Mary, Mercy, and Rebecca to university. So those were our first 3 women. The women that I legit sat down with underneath the mango tree and was like, here's the deal. You make these sandals, promise you're going to go to college, and then move back home to the US, and tried to start, selling these sandals out of the back of my car. So, oh my gosh, I didn't actually do the math. This is really fun. Okay. So in the beginning of 2010, then we just sold enough to send those 3 women to university. And this is the point in the story where we're like, okay, now what's next? We had fulfilled that first epic promise, but then we were at this really interesting place where we were like, it worked. What do we do? Do we call it a day and say like, that was like a really fun post-college adventure, we enabled 3 women to go to university, and now I need to go get a job. And by this point, by the way, I was 6 years out from ever being able to take a paycheck from Sseko. So definitely wasn't making money in 2010. My husband had a full-time job, and his full-time job he was a project manager at a little tech company, and he was making money, but not very much. So we were living off of his very entry-level salary. So it already felt a little scary and a little stretched, because I wasn't making any income. And then that's when we were like, oh, let's make it even more intense. Maybe Ben should quit his full-time job.
Oh my gosh.
Maybe the one source of income that we should get rid of. But it really felt like it was a crossroads. So your question about hobby or life or what is this is really interesting, because we were asking ourselves that exact question right in this moment. We were like, okay, It worked the first time, and we have 2 options. We can call it a day and say that was fun, or we can really dive in and say, we're doing something really special. The product is resonating with people. The story is resonating with people. It's actually making an impact. Let's go all in. And it was really the beginning of 2010 where we were like, let's go all in. We were making no money. We were continuing to lose money, as a lot of businesses do in the early days. We were spending a lot of money, and it's a long cash flow cycle to actually get that money back. And so we knew we couldn't hire anybody unless we could go out and raise capital, and we knew no one would give us money. I mean, we couldn't get bank financing. We couldn't get, it was just like, okay, 2 20-something-year-olds are trying to start a manufacturing company in a developing economy. Like, right. We can't have our money. Uh-huh. And Ben happens to have a skill set that is basically the exact opposite of mine. And he, at the same time, he had been working at this tech company and was learning a ton and was really enjoying business, but really had this desire of like, I want to use my love of business. I want it to do something in the world that I feel really proud of and that is making an impact that I can really stand behind. And so we were like, well, you have the opposite skill set. You have this, basically, you want to use business to make a difference in the world. Like, should we just do this together? We spent a lot of time talking to other couples specifically that were married, that had marriages that we looked at and were like, that's the type of marriage that we want to have 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now. Because when we first started telling people that as newlyweds, we wanted to, run this company together, we got a lot of pushback, and from people being like, that's not wise. Like, you're going to kill each other. Like, don't do that. And we really wanted to, heed the wisdom, but then also carve our own path. And so the process that we took was just saying, okay, let's identify 4 or 5 couples. We love their marriage. We love their partnership, and just go lay out all of our cards and say, are we dumb? Should we do it? Like, what do you think? And actually get feedback. And we came to that end of that process being like, we want to give it a try, and we don't know. And we know it's going to be challenging, but we think the ways in which it's going to be challenging are the ways in which we want to be challenged. And so it was right around this time that Ben quit his full-time job. We lost our health insurance. We sold everything that we owned because we had no money to finance this like trip that we wanted to go on to basically like launch the brand. So we sold everything that we owned, including a bunch of the wedding presents that we had just gotten like the year before. Because at this point, we've only been married for like 9 months.
So much transition, Liz.
Yeah, it was a lot. And then we bought a Honda Element and lived out of our car for the next 9 months. So literally 10 years ago, I was living out of my car. I did not have an address.
So many questions about this. Okay. So the first one is like we hear stories like this. And of course you're 10 years in. And so we're like, bravo, way to go. You guys followed your dreams. You listened to your heart. Look at this great thing you've done. But it could not have felt like that in that moment.
No.
You had to have felt like this is either going, did you think to yourself, this will be the best thing ever, or the worst? Or did you think this is going to be okay or the worst? Like where were you after you guys made that decision?
I honestly think I was like, this is going to be the best thing ever, or it's going to be a great tale of epic failure that hopefully will at least be fun to share. I do remember having that perspective of someone that I really loved was kind of lecturing me and telling me why it was a terrible idea and, opportunity costs and 401ks and, all of this stuff. And I just remember thinking like, even if this fails, literally what I will learn from this process, and I mean everything from about how to run a business, I'm like, I think running and failing at a business is probably more valuable than an MBA. Even if you don't succeed, what I'm going to learn out of this is going to be monumental. And then also from a character perspective, being like, I just can't envision coming out on the other side of this and not being more of the person that I want to be, even if it fails.
I love that.
And I think that was what enabled us to have to say let's do it. Like, even if it fails, we're going to come out on the other side. And, I think honestly, our marriage was the thing that felt the riskiest, that it's like, everything else kind of felt like if the business fails, we will have learned from it. If we fail as entrepreneurs, we will have learned from it, but let's make sure that we don't damage our relationship in a way that I'm laughing, but that's real,
Yeah.
And so that was the only one that actually did really kind of feel scary. And I think that that's frankly why that was the only one that we put out to have other people speak into it, of just like, help us, where are our blind spots? Are we being wise in this? Because that was the one that felt the most like, oh, we could do something that we don't want to do here. And I would say throughout the process, it's probably the one that we've been the most adamant about protecting. Like, as long as we protect our relationship, everything else we're going to learn from, and everything else we're going to come back from. And I do say that, and the caveat is that this story sits on a giant mountain of privilege, right? Like, I joke and say that we lived out of our car. We did. We literally lived off of $500 a month for a year. We didn't have health insurance. Like, we slept in parking lots. All of that is the subtext that you might not know is that, like, I knew that we were never going to be in a place where we were like legitimately going to be homeless. We have enough of like a social support network, and we're educated, and there's things that we're like, okay, let's just put this into perspective. Like, if everything goes wrong, we're still going to be okay. Yeah. And recognizing that. And I think seeing that, like, that's not the case for a lot of people. Like, for a lot of people, living out of your car isn't an optional thing. Like, and so for us, I don't know, in some ways it was this recognition that it's like, it is a privilege that we even get to do that and take that risk. So how do we push ourselves one step beyond what we're comfortable doing, and do that with the hope that we get to make the world a little bit better, not just for ourselves, but for other people too.
I think that is so important that you mentioned that as well. And I would imagine that that was, kind of in your mind of like, you had this, we're going to live out of our car. We're not going to have traditional jobs. We're going to, live all this. And you had this social support, like social network, like you said, but you also are not trying to just change your world. You've got women on the other side of the world that are in a lot of ways dependent on you for their future. You have promised them an education. And so I would imagine that there was some of that was spurring you on more than just if you and Ben were trying to create this, new tech company here in America or whatever. So that had to have helped as well.
Oh my gosh. I don't know. Had I not made that promise, Sseko wouldn't exist. If I didn't just deeply believe in the core of my belly in these women and like, hey, if you want to see the world become a better place, like we have got to be creating pathways for women like these specific women to be leaders and to make change and to use their voice to create a brighter future, knowing that like I don't have the capacity to do that because that's not my experience. That's not my world. But like these women do. And I just deeply believe that so many of the things that are wrong in the world will be solved by women like this actually having the opportunity to get an education, to become a leader in their community, to become change makers. And we joke, and I feel like 10 years, later, you can kind of really let nostalgia do its way with your story. But there were some for real dark times during those first few years of just like.
Okay, like what? Tell me one.
All right, guys, I want to take a quick moment to thank our sponsors who make all of our podcasts happen. Today's show is brought to you by Stamps.com. Postage rates have gone up again. Surprise, surprise, you guys. But thankfully, Stamps.com eases the pain with big discounts off post office retail rates. With Stamps.com, you can save 5 cents off every first-class stamp and up to 40% off shipping rates. That kind of savings, it really does add up, especially for small businesses. Since Stamps.com is completely online, it saves time and it saves money. 2 of all of our favorite things. Anything you can do at the post office, you can do at Stamps.com. You personally print official U.S. postage 24/7 for any letter, any package, any class of mail for anywhere. Once your mail is ready, just drop it in a mailbox. I do this all the time, you guys. With Stamps.com, you get discounted postage rates that you can't even get at the post office. It's a fraction of the cost of those expensive postage meters. There's no equipment to lease and no long-term commitments. It's no wonder over 700,000 small businesses already use Stamps.com, including all of us here at Ivy Media. Right now, listeners get a special offer that includes a 4-week trial plus free postage and a digital scale without any long-term commitment. You can try it out. Go to Stamps.com, click on the microphone at the top of the homepage, and type in happy hour. Tell them I sent you there, guys. That's Stamps.com. Enter happy hour. Today's show is brought to you by Liquid IV. A lot of people end up more dehydrated in winter months. Did you know that, guys? And since cold weather makes dehydration harder to spot, you're less likely to refill your water bottles. Thankfully, there's Liquid IV, the fastest, most efficient way to stay hydrated. 1 stick of Liquid IV in 16 ounces of water hydrates you 2 to 3 times faster and more efficiently than water alone. The cellular transport technology offers the optimal ratio of glucose, sodium, and potassium to deliver water and nutrients into the bloodstream. 1 16-ounce glass of water plus Liquid IV can give you equal hydration as drinking 2 to 3 bottles of water, so it's great for workouts, and it's healthier than traditional sugary sports drinks because there are no artificial flavors or preservatives, which makes this mama super, super happy. I've been giving my kids this, and it makes me happy that I know they're getting hydrated and they're not getting all the artificial flavors and preservatives. I've also been using this at the end of the day because sometimes I'm in my office all day. I don't drink as much water as I should, and I love knowing that when I make myself a 16-ounce glass of water and pour in some Liquid IV, I'm getting hydrated 2 to 3 times faster than just water alone. Also, who doesn't love better sleep and a better mood, which is part of the benefits of Liquid IV? Right now, you can get 25% off when you go to liquidiv.com and use code HAPPYHOUR at checkout. That's 25% off anything you order on Liquid IV's website. Just go to liquidiv.com and enter promo code HAPPYHOUR to save 25% off and get better hydration Who doesn't want that, you guys? Don't wait. Start properly hydrating today.
I mean, the finances was, literally 2 weeks after Ben quit his full-time job and we lost health insurance. We could not afford to be on private health insurance. Like we were literally, like I said, making $0. The reason that we lived off of $500 a month is because we literally were like, what are we going to do? We had, I don't know, several $1,000s in savings and that was it. And we were just like trusting that something was going to work out. And there was a couple that we honestly did not even know that well, that were like, listen, and here's the thing that I want people to know, they were not a wealthy couple. And this is why this is so challenging and inspiring to me. They were like, we love what you and Ben are doing. We love your vision for the world and for, how you're trying to create opportunity for these women. We want to support you. Give us your bank account number. Literally no questions asked. We're going to deposit $500 into your bank account until you tell us not to. And we lived off of that $500 because, like I said, we didn't make money for, it was honestly probably, I don't even know how many years. And 2 weeks after we lost our health insurance, we were living off of this $500 a month. I got really sick. And at the time, the doctors like legitimately used the word leukemia and were like, your white, I don't even know what it was, your white blood cell count, everything was like bananas. They didn't know what was going on. For probably 5 days, we thought I had leukemia. We didn't have health insurance. And we were like, we're literally going to be medically bankrupt 2 weeks after trying to do this. Turns out it was dormant malaria and it had just kicked in and blah, 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 which sucks, but not as much as leukemia does.
Exactly.
If you have, access to the medicine to fix it. But that was like, just not having anything to feel like you could stand on. There was probably for sure some ego involved in it of like, before you succeed, it's like my friends were getting jobs and they were like getting promoted and they were going on work trips where they had company cards. And like, it's fun now to say that we lived out of our car, but I would be lying if at the time it didn't feel like I was disappointing people, like I was wasting my degree, like I was aimless, like I, had this like pipe dream that obviously wasn't going to come and everybody was kind of like passing me up, I think was probably a feeling that I had during that time. Definitely moments of like, it's hard to feel great about your life when you're waking up in a McDonald's parking lot, and you're like, I'm legitimately waiting outside the door for McDonald's to open so I can go brush my teeth. That it's just like, there's parts of it that are fun and then there's parts of it that are really not. The point being, I would have given up. Like if I wouldn't have made that promise and in that promise that I really did actually think mattered and was going to benefit not just myself, but hopefully others that I thought were incredibly deserving of that. I don't think I could have done it. And there's other people, maybe they're just more true entrepreneurs that it's like, I just have a vision for this product that I want to see in the world. But man, it was the stress level of being an entrepreneur. I don't know that you can overstate it. Times where it's just like literally we emptied our savings, our entire life savings to like cover a shipment that went rogue because our like retailers were like canceling our orders, and nights where it's like literally before you're getting ready to do payroll and you're like, we don't, our cash flow is so tight that we don't know how we're going to pay payroll. We're definitely not going to pay ourselves. But then you have to show up at the office and like be like, here's where we're going and here's what we're going to do. And like, it is
everything's good.
Everything's good. And we're, and like, and oh my gosh, the stress level is so enormous that for me, waking up every day and saying, but it matters. But it matters. But it matters. But you made a promise, and it matters, I think, is what kept me going.
Well, I have a question because after you had the 3 ladies that you said, okay, awesome, we fulfilled the orders, you're graduating. You're going to get to go to university now. And you could have stopped there and you didn't. And so throughout the next couple of years, did you ever, when the times got hard, did you ever think we've done enough? Like, this is too hard. We've done enough. We can pat ourselves on the back, whatever that might feel like from a privileged standpoint, to say we did something for these women. Did you ever feel that way?
Probably yes. Like, I think I would be unaware to think that there weren't moments where I was like, I think I would be lying if there weren't moments where in my head, I just said, this is too much. It's too much. And like in panic of just like, I can't, it's too much. And I think that there's a particular type of, when you choose a specific way of life and then it becomes too much, I I have trouble affording myself any grace in that, which makes it even harder because my story can go, I can feel so overwhelmed and I can go, this is too much. And then my very nasty, ungraceful voice says to me like, well, you're an idiot. You chose this. This is your bed. Now lie in it. Nobody feels sorry for you. Like it's very different than like if something happens to you, right? You know, if you get cancer and you get hit by a car or something awful happens, like if somebody did something to you, there's kind of this sense where it's like, but you did this to yourself.
You made these choices.
You made these choices. No one feels sorry for you. It can be a lot harder, I think, to raise your hand and ask for help when it feels like, well, everybody else chose a like nice, stable path and they're not in a position of need because they did the like nice, you know, logical, independent next step. And now they don't need anybody to help them out. Now, what I've come to learn over the last 10 years is that like the greatest joy of my life is saying yes to things and then needing people to step into the story with me. And that it's just like, it's not like, oh, let me invite you to my party and like pat you on, you know, like as a nice gesture. It's like, no, I have this really big vision and in order to accomplish it, I need you to be a part of it. And that level of just camaraderie and gratefulness and gratitude and co-creation, I have come to learn on this side is like, that is literally the good stuff of life. Please do not be so afraid that you miss out on it. I have a whole chapter in the book that's about like, put yourself in positions where you have to ask for help. Like dream the dream that's impossible to do by yourself. Take the risk that's going to require you to make the phone call because that is where beauty and relationship and commitment and co-creation is actually found. And if we spend our entire lives trying to just look like we have it all together and be super independent, you may do that. You may be able to pay all your bills and you may be able to, you know, do whatever, but it's like, it's going to be such a sad life and it's going to be so lonely and there's not going to be this energy and this collaboration and this like codependency that I've come to believe is really beautiful. But I would be lying if I said there weren't moments in the story where, yes, I was like, I'm done. I'm waving the white flag. It's too much. And I think it's that kind of meta promise of like, but are you doing work? Like I get to wake up every morning. Like it's so hard, but like I really believe in what we're doing. And I believe that it like matters. And it's remarkable what that does to the human spirit and like what that the depth that you are that you can tap into in a new way when you have that.
Well, I appreciate your honesty about that because it could be really easy, you know, on 10 years on the other side to say, no, this has been hard, but it's always been great. And we've always had our eye on the prize. But to really, really be vulnerable and say, you know, there's been times that this has been super, super difficult. I love what you learned about collaboration. And I think that the only way we learn that is by stepping out and having to do it. And that is so scary to some people. But you and Sseko would not be who you are without collaboration.
Yeah. And I think the statement you and Sseko wouldn't be who you are is like, yes, obviously Sseko wouldn't exist, but I don't think, you know, there's so much as humans that we have to like work through in order to get to the other side. And it just never, ever feels good in the process. And that's why so many people, I think, wave the white flag and say like, it's too much. I'm done. Like, I don't want to fail so loudly and in front of people. I don't want to raise my hand and have to ask for help. I don't want to embarrass myself. I don't want to set a goal and then actually fail. And I really do feel like 10 years in, I'm like in a place where I'm like, I would so much rather fail 9 times out of 10, but then get to experience what happens when you actually achieve. But then also like understanding that those 9 times out of 10 weren't in vain. Like those 9 times out of 10 actually helped me to become the person that I think God actually created me to be. And that was the tool that was used in order to get me there.
That's so good. And this is why I like looking back because you can't see that in the moment.
You can't.
You don't feel that in the moment. And it doesn't feel like this. But when you are able to look back and go, okay, I remember what it felt like, but now I can say what's true about that moment. Then when it hits again, you have like this kind of this muscle memory to go, okay, I've felt this before. I have been here before. And here's what I know to be true about this. And that's not just with like entrepreneurship. That's with relationships. That's with the whatever job you work, school, parents, everything. It makes us go, I know what this feels like and I know what is true.
I love that. And I know I've come out on the other side once. And I'm going to come out on the other side again. Like this is, I've felt like everything was failing and this ship was sinking before. And, you know, and this is why community is so important. I literally sat this past one. I meet with my ladies, my best friends every Wednesday night, no matter what. We share our lives and we're totally transparent. And I was sharing about something that I am now on the other side of, and seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And to hear my best friend sit around me, and one of them just kind of stopped me and she goes, "Do you realize it was only like 6 weeks ago that we were sitting next door? We all live next door to each other. We were sitting in my living room and this conversation looked so different. Like, I know it seems like it's been a hard, long season, but it's only been like in 6 weeks. Look at what you've come through and look at your perspective." And to me, like, I couldn't have even done that. Like, because that 6 weeks where I'm having a complete meltdown, breakdown in my best friend's living room felt like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I've been in this season and it's been so challenging, and where is the light? And to then have other people get to say, so like, good. Look, oh, you've come out on the other side of that. And like, and I know that, you know, given enough time, like, there's going to be another example of being in that same moment. And to your point, being able to have that memory of going like, okay, you were in that really dark place and now you're on the other side. Like, there is light at the end of the tunnel. And then also being able to point other people to that as well too. And it's like, it's not, you know, I love the idea that it's like, I hope one of those women has the mental image of me having a complete breakdown in their living room to when they're having the breakdown in my living room being like, oh, I remember when Liz was in this really dark place. And then she came out of it. And then we were on the other side of it together. And that's where I really believe the importance of community comes into play as well. Because we can remind one another of that.
I agree so much. Okay. I love looking back on your past 10 years, and thanks for your vulnerability and sharing with us about it. But what do you look forward to in 10 years? And I sometimes, honestly, I think looking forward, we assume it's easier for people, but sometimes it's not. And so I don't know how that is for you. I'm going to assume, with what I know about you, that looking forward is way easier than looking back. So tell me if I'm right or wrong. And then tell me, what are you looking forward to the next 10 years?
I think looking forward is easier in the sense that I do it a lot more. Like, I'm always thinking about the future. Because I have to. Yeah. I think it can be difficult in the sense that it ignites a lot of fear. Like, we fear the unknown. I still fear setting new goals and setting new visions and setting new courses because, you know, I've got that muscle memory, but it's like, I'm still a human. And the idea of like failing or embarrassing myself or like putting myself in a position of need or risk is still actually really scary to me. I'm a little bit I'm a little bit biased because I just got home from a trip to Uganda where I got to take 14 of our top sellers. So our products are sold through Sseko Fellows. So these are women that in their community, they are selling the product, they're styling their friends, they're earning an income off of the products that they're selling. So we're building this amazing team in Uganda. We're also building this incredible team in the United States of women who are coming together, and getting to see my two teams together, getting to see my Uganda production manufacturing team, and then getting to see my sales team and seeing the relationship and the joy and the connection. I'm just like totally on fire. I'm on fire frankly, right now we're in a place where our Uganda team is just freaking rocking. Like, they're just like our executive team over there. They just run the show. They know what's up, and they're really putting out the challenge to us. They're like, okay, we did our part. We built a best in class manufacturing company. We can handle a lot. What do you got for us?
Yeah.
Like, really issuing the challenge here on the U.S. side of things to kick it up and to grow the fellows program and to continue to welcome new women into our community over on this side. And so I would say when I think about the next 10 years, we have our founding fellows wall in Uganda, and it has the list of the first 500 fellows that ever joined us. And it's this like cool, just this like beautiful visual of this like global team that we're creating. And the idea of getting to grow that community so that we can grow the opportunity now, not just in Uganda. We work in Uganda, Ethiopia, Peru, India. So really seeing like the global impact that we as a community are able to have has me on all sorts of fire. And then I think, you know, really with the book, the process of the book was like how I know, and I have this thing through Sseko that I'm like, hey, you want to make an impact in the world, but you're not quite sure how. just come along and hang out with us. Like we'll give you every step for how to find community and how to make this beautiful impact. So I have that. And then I also recognize that there's everybody. And I don't care if you're a stay-at-home mom, if you're a doctor, if you're a graphic designer, like I truly believe that each and every one of us were created on purpose and for a purpose. And helping to teach and walk alongside and encourage people and how to tap into that is a real passion of mine and has developed really over the last like few years. And I think is going to be one of the guiding passions of my next 10 years of like, okay, I have this journey. I've learned so much. A lot of what Beginner's Pluck is about is this, I think a lot of the messages that we're getting in our current culture about finding your passion and dreaming big are actually hurting us. And they're creating a sense of anxiety and kind of this analysis paralysis. And so I just feel so passionate and on fire about helping demystify that for people and encouraging them and equipping them to go out and build their own lives of purpose and passion and impact.
Well, I am on that train with you. So I am so excited for all the things you are doing. And it's been really fun for me to follow you these last couple of years and see Sseko grow and your book expand and reach to so many people. And I love what you guys are doing. I love everything you guys are creating and the mission you have. And so it's fun to look back, Liz, and think about those days of you living in the car, brushing your teeth at McDonald's all the way to now.
I will say, getting the first breakfast sandwich off the line, it's not, they're actually pretty good, if I'm being honest.
Oh, there's the perks to that. Did you see that? This is totally random. Did you see that they have a McDonald's candle out now?
No.
Okay, I should send you one. There it is. Liz, thank you so much for sharing your last decade with us.
Thanks, Jamie. This is such a blast. I love this concept and love what you're doing in the world.